well. So I will start with some formal welcome and introduction. I'm Ju Gosling, also known as the artist Ju90. I'm artistic director of Together 2012, who are bringing you this show today. Quick bit of audio description. I have short henna red hair in a self styled corona crop. I'm wearing a Regard t shirt. I'm a co chair of Regard, which is the National LGBTQI plus disabled people's organisation. And that's a white t shirt with a design with a rainbow wheelchair using, well, it's a wheelchair using sign turned into a rainbow on an upside down pink triangle. And I have a kind of, I think it's made in India rainbow waistcoat. I've also got black plastic glasses, black wrist braces, silver coloured jewellery. I have a rainbow striped smartwatch on, and I have pale olive skin and green eyes. There isn't really the kind of housekeeping to do that we would usually have at the start of a production, but just to say, if you haven't got the latest version of Zoom and you need to watch the British Sign Language interpretation, update now. If you want to see this with live captions and you're watching on YouTube, go to our website, which is www.together2012.org.uk, or hopefully, with the miracles of modern technology, you should just be able to click on the CC for closed captions. You can certainly do that on Zoom. It is just click on the CC, bottom right of the screen. The other thing I wanted to flag up before I welcome our guests this evening is that to view the chat, you need to go to the top left hand of your screen, click on view, and click on show chat. And once you've got that chat up, on the bottom right of your screen, you will be able to send us messages. You can also use live chat on YouTube. So if you have questions that you would like to put to Vince Laws or Damien Darkness, who are about to join me now, then just use the live chat box. But now I'm going to invite Damien and Vince, with the assistance of Josh Surgener, our technician, to come into the screen. And while they're joining us, I would just like to say a big thank you to Chris Burrow, our British Sign Language interpreter, Global Real Time Captioning, who've been providing live captions throughout the festival, Arts Council England for funding, National Lottery Community Fund for funding, and London Emergency Fund. And London Emergency Fund have been the people who've made it possible for us to provide you with the live captions tonight. So welcome, Vince. Welcome, Damien.
Hello.
Hi, Damien. I think you've still got your microphone on mute. So while Damien's doing that, Vince, do you want to give us a quick bit of audio description?
Oh, yes, I haven't done that. Let me think. Okay, well, I'm absolutely stunningly gorgeous white man. I'm 21 going on 60 next year. What do I say? A bit stubbly. I've done my own haircut, so I'm kind of zero on the sides and a little tufty bits coming through on the top. I've got on a sailor suit, which has had some additional bits of color added. So I've got hearts, which I spray painted myself. I've got rainbow colors and hearts and all sorts. And what else? Oh, I'm wearing very expensive jewelry, but I'm not going to tell you where. I think that'll probably do. Behind me is a beautiful painting of my hound. I do have two hounds here, so if you hear a lot of barking and I get dragged off to one side, you'll know what it is.
Well, that's grand. So, Damien, if you're still looking for the mute button, on mine, it's on the bottom left corner of the screen. It's a white microphone thing, and it may not come up until your mouse is actually over the bottom of the screen. So what I'm going to do while Damien is still trying to get Zoom to work, we know how difficult the technology is. And of course, it is entirely possible that Damien's pressing the right button and it's not working, because that's certainly happened to us before. But if you keep trying, Damien, like I say, bottom
So,
left-hand corner next to stop video, if you've got things like, if you've got the menu up at the bottom, then it will be on the bottom left. And if the menu isn't up, try hovering. So, oh, I was just about to come to you, Vince, and then you had a wonderful drink. So, this is World AIDS Day, and I was delighted that we were able to talk about sex and disability on such an auspicious occasion. It's not something that people usually discuss at all, and that's something that Damien and I were talking about, a little bit earlier. What's your take on our kind of this idea that disabled people, we're either very, very innocent and vulnerable, or we're asexual and genderless, or we're exoticized and we need to be controlled?
Well, I agree with all the above, obviously. What do I think? Well, I think there is a problem with that, isn't there? We're not really meant to have sex lives. I think if you're disabled, really should. What are you doing having sex anyway? You should be staying at home and being sick and claiming your benefits or whatever it is. I don't know. I think because I'm an out gay man, I don't particularly let it stop me. But I suppose with HIV in particular, it's probably a bit different actually for people, in all seriousness, for people with what we call invisible disabilities, because to all extents and purposes we can look normal, as it were. So maybe there's a different aspect to be had from people who have a physical disability, who have something that other people can see right from the off. But I know with HIV, for example, then yes, you get people who wouldn't touch you with a barge pole, and have a whole problem with that area. And that's kind of their problem. There are ways of having. I think everybody, it's a human right, isn't it, to have a sexuality or a sexual identity, or to have needs. And
Well, we were talking about that, and I think, Damien, we can hear you now. So would you like
Yes,
to come in with a bit of audio description first?
yes, I'm back. I'm back. No, I'm hetero, but I wrote Sex and Disability because of the feelings of vulnerability and powerlessness that disabled people often feel. I thought that was an interesting subject, and there's a lot to talk about, including, how people's relationships are dependent upon things like how much power they've got, and those kind of issues were really what motivated me.
And it's a musical, isn't it, that we're going to see from you?
Yes, it is. Yes, yes. I'm quite proud of the song.
So how did it come about? You were telling me a little bit earlier, but how and when did you start this project?
Yes, I started about a year before. I'd had some luck financing my own musicals, but I thought this time I'd get the Arts Council to fund it, which luckily they agreed to do. But the original idea came from Scope, who they're a disabled charity, and they were exploring the idea of disabled people having sexual relationships. And so I thought it's something you could take up and run with. So that was the original idea.
Yes, I mean, like I say, I'm a long-standing co-chair of Regard, the national LGBTQI plus disabled people's organisation. And I was quite shocked about 10 years ago when a major, well, probably the major disability charity was being formed to be told that they weren't including the right to family life because the idea of disabled people having sex put off donors, but the idea of people having gay sex was just impossible. And now disabled gay people were allowed to adopt. They simply couldn't include it. And it seemed to me, not for the first time, that it's apparently good for us to work, good for us to be off benefits, and possibly good for us to live independently, but not with other people. And I was, really shocked when they turned around and said, well, Regard can promote the right to family life. And of course, the right to family life, I think, is absolutely at the heart of independent living. At Together, we always say we're disability arts, culture, and human rights organisation. Article 30 of the UN Convention on the Rights of Disabled People gives us an equal right to participate in art, culture, and sport, but also, of course, as with Damien, to be resourced to produce our own culture and celebrate our own culture, as we are doing in this Disability History Month festival. But yes, it hadn't quite occurred to me that it was a kind of financial thing, that nobody wanted to fund an organisation that was encouraging disabled people to have sex. So tell me, your play was, yes, let's hear when your plays were first put on, because of course we would love in an ideal world to be seeing these plays in the theatre now. But I think the next best thing is going to be to travel back in time in just a few minutes and join you at the theatre then. So actually, let me ask you first, Vince. When was you? Tell me the history of your play, because it was performed and then you created the podcast, wasn't it?
Yes, I like that little bit that you just said. So I've just written down here that my next show is going to be called Disabled People Having Sex. I think that'll go down pretty damn well. So thank you for that. You're not getting any money, but okay. So yeah, no, I started off this piece called A Very Queer Nazi Faust. And I'm a very slow worker, partly to do with mental health problems. For me, it's like holding a whole load of information in my head at one time and being able to sort of see the whole project. So I found a way of, I'd been doing smaller pieces. I'd done a one-man sort of poetry play, 15 minutes, and I wanted to tackle something a bit bigger. And I was doing a lot of art shows. And when I was putting on art shows, I was holding a launch event and trying to get interesting people in and make it a bit of a sort of collection where you get a bit of speech and a bit of song and a bit of poetry. And then I was wondering, going on from that, if I could create a sort of happening with a narrative. And that was really what this began life as, a kind of happening with a narrative. But I made it as a comic because I could put 32 postcards on my dining room table and see the whole book, as it were. And then I could change little bits on this page, that page, and what have you. So it started off as a comic, and I got a free read through Shape and TLC through the free literary reads, and got some good feedback and worked that into the script, sent it back, got some good feedback. And then I threw it out in 2017 on Facebook mainly, in my area, Norfolk, in Norwich, and asked for volunteers to come and help me make it into a physical happening. And we brought it to life on an absolute shoestring budget, 13 local people, local legends, some disabled, some not, some queer, some not. And yeah, we put it on. It went really well. We did it at Norwich Pride in 2017. We got great feedback from it. We'd only really meant to do it as a one-off, but then we discussed it at that Christmas and decided this needs to go on again. But wouldn't it be lovely to have funding? And fortunately, I got some funding from Unlimited. They were brilliant and they're supporting me still. And Norwich Arts Centre, and a little bit of money from Norfolk County Council, which felt really good, make some props. So yeah, we put it on in 2018 at Norwich Arts Centre, and yeah, we had a ball putting it on, and people really enjoyed it. It's got a backbone of disability rights protest. It's protesting at the DWP, the Department for Work and Pensions, and their terrible policies, which are basically killing people. That's kind of runs right through it. There are protest banners and lots of protest art in it. And then in front of that, we play a sort of surreal, funny, like a pantomime on acid kind of thing. And it's all about the central character, John Faust. He's HIV positive, suffers depression, suffers anxiety. They say, write what you know. And it's the first act, it's him trying to commit suicide, frankly, throw himself into the sea and drown. But Lucifer won't let him drown because she loves his masterpiece, his poetry that he's been writing. And in the end, she gets him to sign the contract, and he gets perfect health, and his life takes off in Act 2.
Excellent. And we were saying when we spoke yesterday that the benefit system really, well, does so many dreadful things to everybody these days, not just disabled people anymore. But that sense of not being able to form relationships because you can't afford to live together. I mean, my partner and I have been together 20 years. We still can't afford to merge households. Or worse, when you're stuck in a relationship and you can't afford to move because of the benefit system. So I feel like all of these things come together. If you're interested in weird and wonderful ways, and or perhaps just not quite such conventional ways of representing protest, do also check out the Gobscure page where you can download his pamphlet on which involves being able to make all sorts of placards and things in the spirit of Mary Wollstonecraft. And also Justin Edgar's exhibition, Reasonable Adjustment, about the reasonable adjustment movement. And we'll be talking about that here at 7 o'clock on Thursday as part of the International Together 2020 Disability Film Festival. But finally, before we sit back, relax, hope you've brought your own drinks, ice cream and popcorn. We're just going to hear a little bit more from Damien about how you wrote your play and when it was performed, and the actors we're going to see tonight.
Yes, that's an interesting point because, as you know, people in the disabled community feel very strongly about parts of disabled characters being played by people who aren't disabled. So one thing I was absolutely determined to do was to ensure that as many people as possible were disabled, regardless of whether the part required them to be or not. So in the end, we had 4 or 5 disabled people, although there were no more than 2 disabled characters in the play itself. So we're pretty pleased with that because it enabled disabled people to have a go at that sort of thing. And Disability Arts has shown that disabled people have a real contribution to make. And so I was quite gratified with that, especially bearing in mind it was all done on an Arts Council grant. So we literally had to count every penny. So yeah, that was definitely a plus, being able to cast disabled people. They weren't all easy to find. I mean, the male disabled lead, we had to go through an agency in London, which supplies disabled people for parts. But we did it in the end, we got there in the end. So that was definitely very gratifying.
So we're now going to watch both productions. Well, I should say watch both productions. Vince, we have some images, but it is a podcast. So do you just want to explain in about 30 seconds how it became a podcast, Vince?
Yes, I'd love to. Well, it was called, let me just say I've got 4 things just to quickly say. It was called A Very Queer Nazi Faust. It's also got a subtitle, The Tragic True Life and Deserved Death of a Benefit Scrounger by Himself. So that's why you might hear 2 different titles as we go through. Basically, the whole thing is voices in John Faust's head. So if you bear that in mind, that might make it easier. And great to hear Damien talking there about getting disabled actors to fulfill those roles. And next, what I'm doing right now is I'm rewriting it for 5 disabled actors to take on tour. Don't know quite when that's going to happen because of COVID, et cetera, et cetera. But that is exactly as Damien said, to put disabled people right full on stage, and we can do all those things. It's crazy that we're held back by so many barriers. And then the only other thing to say is we made this it's based on a live performance from 2018. So Mrs. May and Arlene Foster were actually running the country then. I know it's nostalgia for us all now, all that time ago, before all these other disasters. But that's just to explain that. So if you hear Arlene Foster and Mrs. May, it was actually Arlene Foster holding a puppet of Mrs. May, which says it all. And Lucifer is played by a woman because that was the best person to play the part. Well done, Jan. And she plays a shape-shifting pansexual hermaphrodite. So I think that covers all bases.
Yeah, I think we've got a wonderful evening ahead. So, Damien, finally, where was this recorded? I know it was recorded just over a year ago.
Yes, it was filmed at the time, and then we were able to get it into a format where we could put it on YouTube. So it was filmed in November of last year, and we were able to get it into a format that we could put out about a couple of months ago.
And was it filmed in a theatre? It is
Yes,
a
it
live
was,
production,
yes.
is it? So that's what I just want to say. So which theatre are we taking ourselves to in a moment?
It was called the Purple Playhouse Theatre, and it's in Hove.
This just gets better and better. Guys, I could talk to you all night and I would absolutely love to. And I know everybody would love to hear from you as well. We have audience members over in North America as well as the UK and possibly elsewhere too. But we've got a wonderful evening ahead. So I'm just going to say thank you all for coming. Have a great evening, and we will now hand over to the first set of actors. Have a great evening, and let's keep talking about sex and disability.